Judges, chapter 11. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead begat Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bore him sons, and his wife's sons grew up. And they thrust out Jephthah, and said to him, You shall not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of a strange woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers, and dwelled in the land of Tob. And there were gathered vain men to Jephthah, and went out with him. And it came to pass in process of time that the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah out of the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, Come and be our captain, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, Did not you hate me, and expel me out of my father's house? And why are you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, Therefore we turn again to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. And Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, If you bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and the Lord deliver them before me, shall I be your head? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, The Lord be witness between us, if we do not so according to your words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and captain over them. And Jephthah uttered all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. And Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, saying, What have you to do with me, that you are come against me to fight in my land? And the king of the children of Ammon answered to the messengers of Jephthah, Because Israel took away my land, when they came up out of Egypt, from Arnon even to Jabbok and to Jordan. Now therefore restore those lands again peaceably. And Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the children of Ammon, and said to him, Thus said Jephthah, Israel took not away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. But when Israel came up from Egypt, and walked through the wilderness to the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Let me, I pray you, pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen thereto. And in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. And Israel stayed in Kadesh. Then they went along through the wilderness, and compassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and pitched on the other side of Arnon, but came not within the border of Moab, for Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, Let us pass, we pray you, through your land into my place. But Sihon trusted not Israel to pass through his coast, but Sihon gathered all his people together, and pitched in Jahaz, and fought against Israel. And the Lord God of Israel delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. And they possessed all the coasts of the Amorites, from Arnon even to Jabbok, and from the wilderness even to Jordan. So now the Lord God of Israel has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel, and should you possess it? Will not you possess that which Chemosh your God gives you to possess? So whomsoever the Lord our God shall drive out from before us, them will we possess. And now are you anything better than Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelled in Heshbon and her towns, and in Aroer and her towns, and in all the cities that be along the coast of Arnon 300 years? Why therefore did you not recover them within that time? Why, I have not sinned against you, but you do me wrong to war against me. The Lord, the judge, be judge this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. However, the king of the children of Ammon listened not to the words of Jephthah which he sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpah of Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he passed over to the children of Ammon. And Jephthah vowed a vow to the Lord, and said, If you shall without fail deliver the children of Ammon into my hands, then it shall be that whatever comes forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So Jephthah passed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. And he smote them from Aroer even till you come to Minnith, even 20 cities, and to the plain of the vineyards, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. And Jephthah came to Mizpah his house. And behold, his daughter came out to meet him with tambourines and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass, when he saw her, that he rent his clothes, and said, Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you are one of them that trouble me. For I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot go back. And she said to him, My father, if you have opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to that which has proceeded out of your mouth. For as much as the Lord has taken vengeance for you of your enemies, even of the children of Ammon. And she said to her father, Let this thing be done for me, let me alone 2 months, that I may go up and down on the mountains and mourn my virginity, I and my fellows. And he said, Go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her companions and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. And it came to pass at the end of 2 months, that she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow which he had vowed, and she knew no man. And it was a custom in Israel, that the daughters of Israel went yearly to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in a year. Chapter 12. And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward, and said to Jephthah, Why passed you over to fight against the children of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house on you with fire. And Jephthah said to them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, you delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that you delivered me not, I put my life in my hands, and passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Why then are you come up to me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, You Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites, and among the Manassites. And the Gileadites took the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites, which were escaped, said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead said to him, Are you an Ephraimite? If he said no, then said they to him, See now, Shibboleth. And he said Shibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan, and there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000. And Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then died Jephthah the Gileadite, and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And after him Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. And he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad, and took in 30 daughters from abroad for his sons, and he judged Israel 7 years. Then died Ibzan, and was buried at Bethlehem. And after him Elon, a Zebulunite, judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon the Zebulunite died, and was buried in Aijalon, in the country of Zebulun. And after him Abdon, the son of Hillel, a Pirathonite, judged Israel. And he had 40 sons and 30 nephews, that rode on 70 ass colts, and he judged Israel 8 years. And Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, died, and was buried in Pirathon, in the land of Ephraim, in the mount of the Amalekites. Judges, chapter 13. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, and bore not. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman, and said to her, Behold now, you are barren, and bore not, but you shall conceive, and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray you, drink not wine, or strong drink, or eat not any unclean thing. For see, you shall conceive, and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very terrible. But I asked him not from where he was, neither told me his name. But he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and now drink no wine, nor strong drink. Neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah entreated the Lord, and said, O my Lord, let the man of God, which you did send, come again to us, and teach us what we shall do to the child that shall be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah her husband was not with her. And the woman made haste and ran and showed her husband and said to him, Behold, the man has appeared to me that came to me the other day. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man that spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now let your words come to pass. How shall we order the child, and how shall we do to him? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her beware. She may not eat of anything that comes of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, I pray you, let us detain you until we have made ready a kid for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Though you detain me, I will not eat of your bread. And if you will offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, that when your sayings come to pass we may do you honor? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why ask you thus after my name, seeing it is secret? So Manoah took a kid with a meat offering and offered it on a rock to the Lord. And the angel did wondrously, and Manoah and his wife looked on. For it came to pass, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And Manoah and his wife looked on it, and fell on their faces to the ground. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die, because we have seen God. But his wife said to him, If the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands. Neither would he have showed us all these things, nor would, as at this time, have told us such things as these. And the woman bore a son, and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move at times in the camp of Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Judges chapter 14. And Samson went down to Timnath, and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up, and told his father and his mother, and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. Then his father and his mother said to him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of your brothers, or among all my people, that you go to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and his mother knew that it was of the Lord, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Then went Samson down, and his father and his mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily on him, and he rent him as he would have rent a kid. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. And he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands, and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. And it came to pass, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, I will now put forth a riddle to you. If you can certainly declare it me within 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets, and 30 changes of garments. But if you cannot declare it me, then shall you give me 30 sheets, and 30 changes of garments. And they said to him, Put forth your riddle, that we may hear it. And he said to them, Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. And it came to pass on the 7th day, that they said to Samson's wife, Entice your husband, that he may declare us the riddle, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you called us to take that we have? Is it not so? And Samson's wife wept before him, and said, You do but hate me, and love me not. You have put forth a riddle to the children of my people, and have not told it me. And he said to her, Behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it to you? And she wept before him the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she lay sore on him. And she told the riddle to the children of her people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day, before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, If you had not plowed with my heifer, you had not found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments to them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. Judges chapter 15. But it came to pass within a while after, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson bid his wife with a kid. And he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber. But her father would not suffer him to go in. And her father said, I truly thought that you had utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray you, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the middle between two tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines, and burn up both the stalks and also the standing corn, with the vineyards and olives. Then the Philistines said, Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, Though you have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelled in the top of the rock Etam. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah, and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why are you come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson are we come up to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Etam, and said to Samson, Know you not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, As they did to me, so have I done to them. And they said to him, We are come down to bind you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, Swear to me that you will not fall on me yourselves. And they spoke to him, saying, No, but we will bind you fast and deliver you into their hand. But surely we will not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily on him. And the cords that were on his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, With the jawbone of an ass, heaps on heaps. With the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramath-lehi. And he was sore thirsty, and called on the Lord, and said, You have given this great deliverance into the hand of your servant. And now shall I die for thirst, and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. But God split an hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water out of there. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived, why he called the name thereof En-hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Judges chapter 16. Then went Samson to Gaza, and saw there an harlot, and went into her. And it was told the Gazaites, saying, Samson is come here. And they compassed him in, and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, In the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of an hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her, and said to her, Entice him, and see wherein his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give you, every one of us, 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, Tell me, I pray you, wherein your great strength lies, and with which you might be bound to afflict you. And Samson said to her, If they bind me with 7 green thongs that were never dried, then shall I be weak, and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green thongs which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber. And she said to him, The Philistines be on you, Samson. And he broke the thongs, as the thread of a wick is broken when it touches the fire, so his strength was not known. And Delilah said to Samson, Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray you, with which you might be bound. And he said to her, If they bind me fast with new ropes that never were occupied, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Delilah therefore took new ropes and bound him therewith, and said to him, The Philistines be on you, Samson. And there were liars in wait abiding in the chamber. And he broke them from off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, Till now you have mocked me, and told me lies. Tell me with which you might be bound. And he said to her, If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with the pin, and said to him, The Philistines be on you, Samson. And he awaked out of his sleep, and went away with the pin of the beam, and with the web. And she said to him, How can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me wherein your great strength lies. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words, and urged him, so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart, and said to her, There has not come a razor on my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak, and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, for he has showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her, and brought money in their hand. And she made him sleep on her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, The Philistines be on you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep, and said, I will go out as other times before, and shake myself. And he knew not that the Lord was departed from him. But the Philistines took him, and put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza, and bound him with fetters of brass, and he did grind in the prison house. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaven. Then the lords of the Philistines gathered them together, for to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to rejoice, for they said, Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, Our God has delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us. And it came to pass, when their hearts were merry, they all said, Call for Samson, that he may make us sport. For they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him between the pillars. And Samson said to the lad that held him by the hand, Suffer thee, that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house stands, that I may lean on them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there, and there were on the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld while Samson made sport. And Samson called to the Lord, and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray you, and strengthen me, I pray you, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars on which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, of the other with his left. And Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell on the lords, and on all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Then his brothers and all the house of his father came down, and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the burial plot of Manoah his father. He judged Israel 20 years. Judges, chapter 17. And there was a man of Mount Ephraim, whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, about which you cursed, and spoke of also in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. And his mother said, Blessed be you of the Lord, my son. And when he had restored the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I had wholly dedicated the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a graven image and a molten image. Now therefore I will restore it to you. Yet he restored the money to his mother, and his mother took 200 shekels of silver, and gave them to the founder, who made thereof a graven image and a molten image, and they were in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had an house of gods, and made an ephod and a teraphim, and consecrated one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And there was a young man out of Bethlehem, Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed out of the city from Bethlehem, Judah, to sojourn where he could find a place. And he came to Mount Ephraim to the house of Micah as he journeyed. And Micah said to him, From where come you? And he said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem, Judah, and I go to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said to him, Dwell with me, and be to me a father, and a priest, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver by the year, and a suit of apparel, and your victuals. So the Levite went in. And the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man was to him as one of his sons. And Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Micah. Then said Micah, Now know I that the Lord will do me good, seeing I have a Levite to my priest. Judges chapter 18. In those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of the Danites sought them an inheritance to dwell in. For to that day all their inheritance had not fallen to them among the tribes of Israel. And the children of Dan sent of their family 5 men from their coasts, men of valor from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. And they said to them, Go, search the land. Who, when they came to Mount Ephraim, to the house of Micah, they lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they knew the voice of the young man, the Levite, and they turned in thither, and said to him, Who brought you here, and what makes you in this place? And what have you here? And he said to them, Thus and thus deals Micah with me, and has hired me, and I am his priest. And they said to him, Ask counsel, we pray you, of God, that we may know whether our way which we go shall be prosperous. And the priest said to them, Go in peace, before the Lord is your way wherein you go. Then the 5 men departed, and came to Laish, and saw the people that were therein, how they dwelled careless, after the manner of the Zidonians, quiet and secure, and there was no magistrate in the land that might put them to shame in anything, and they were far from the Zidonians, and had no business with any man. And they came to their brothers to Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brothers said to them, What say you? And they said, Arise, that we may go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And are you still? Be not slothful to go, and to enter to possess the land. When you go, you shall come to a people secure, and to a large land, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no want of anything that is in the earth. And there went from there the family of the Danites out of Zorah and out of Eshtaol 600 men appointed with weapons of war. And they went up and pitched in Kiriath Jearim in Judah, while they called the place Mahanahadan to this place. Behold, it is behind Kiriath Jearim. And they passed there to Mount Ephraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then answered the 5 men that went out to spy out the country of Laish, and said to the brothers, Do you know that there is in this houses an ephod and a teraphim and a graven image and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you have to do. And they turned thitherward, and came to the house of the young man, the Levite, even to the house of Micah, and saluted him. And the 600 men appointed with their weapons of war, which were the children of Dan, stood by the entering of the gate. And the 5 men that went out to spy the land went up, and came in thither, and took the graven image, and the ephod, and the teraphim, and the molten image. And the priest stood in the entering of the gate with the 600 men that were appointed with weapons of war. And these went into Micah's house, and fetched the carved image, the ephod, and the teraphim, and the molten image. Then said to the priest to them, What do you? And they said to him, Hold your peace. Lay your hand on your mouth, and go with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or that you be a priest to a tribe and a family in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the teraphim and the graven image, and went in the middle of the people. So they turned and departed, and put the little ones and the cattle and the carriage before them. And then when they were a good way away from the house of Micah, the men that were in the houses near to Micah's house were gathered together, and overtook the children of Dan. And they cried to the children of Dan, and they turned their faces, and said to Micah, What ails you, that you come with such a company? And he said, You have taken away my gods, which I made, and the priest, and you are gone away. And what have I more? And what is this you say to me? What ails you? And the children of Dan said to him, Let not your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows run on you, and you lose your life, with the lives of your household. And the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. And they took the things which Micah had made, and the priests which he had, and came to Laish, to a people that were quiet and secure, and they smote them with the edge of the sword and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, and they had no business with any man, and it was in the valley that lies by Beth-rehob. And they built a city and dwelled therein. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city was Laish at the first. And the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershon, the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan, until the day of the captivity of the land. And they set them up Micah's graven image, which he had made, all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. Judges, chapter 19. And it came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning in the side of Mount Ephraim, who took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him to her father's house to Bethlehem, Judah, and was there 4 whole months. And her husband arose and went after her to speak friendly to her, and to bring her again, having his servant with him and a couple of asses. And she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. And his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him, and he stayed with him 3 days, so they did eat and drink and lodge there. And it came to pass on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he rose up to depart, and the damsel's father said to his son-in-law, Comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. And they sat down, and did eat and drink both of them together, for the damsel's father had said to the man, Be content, I pray you, and tarry all night, and let your heart be merry. And when the man rose up again to depart, his father-in-law urged him, therefore he lodged there again. And he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart, and the damsel's father said, Comfort your heart, I pray you, and they tarried until afternoon, and they did eat both of them. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said to him, Behold, now the day draws toward evening. I pray you, tarry all night. Behold, the day grows to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry, and tomorrow get you early on your way, that you may go home. But the man would not tarry that night, but he rose up and departed, and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem. And there were with him 2 asses saddled. His concubine also was with him. And when they were by Jebus, the day was far spent, and the servant said to his master, Come, I pray you, and let us turn into the city of the Jebusites, and lodge in it. And his master said to him, We will not turn aside here into the city of a stranger, that is not of the children of Israel. We will pass over to Gibeah. And he said to his servant, Come, and let us draw near to one of those places to lodge all night, in Gibeah or in Ramah. And they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down on them when they were by Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside thither to go in to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat him down in a street of the city, for there was no man that took them into his house to lodging. And behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at even, which was also of Mount Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah. But the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he had lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city. And the old man said, Where go you? And from where come you? And he said to him, We are passing from Bethlehem, Judah, toward the side of Mount Ephraim. From there am I. And I went to Bethlehem, Judah, but I am now going to the house of the Lord, and there is no man that receives me to house. Yet there is both straw and provender for our asses, and there is bread and wine also for me and for your handmaid, and for the young man which is with your servants. There is no want of anything. And the old man said, Peace be with you. Howsoever, let all your wants lie on me, only lodge not in the street. So he brought him into his house, and gave provender to the asses, and they washed their feet, and did eat and drink. Now as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about, and beat at the door, and spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, Bring forth the man that came into your house, that we may know him. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them, and said to them, No, my brothers, no, I pray you, do not so wickedly. Seeing that this man is come into my house, do not this folly. Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. Them I will bring out now, and humble you them, and do with them what seems good to you, but this man do not so vile a thing. But the men would not listen to him. So the man took his concubine and brought her forth to them, and they knew her, and abused her all the night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Then came the woman, in the dawning of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her lord was, till it was light. And her lord rose up in the morning, and opened the doors of the house, and went out to go his way. And behold, the woman his concubine was fallen down at the door of the house, and her hands were on the threshold. And he said to her, Up, and let us be going. But none answered. Then the man took her up on an ass, and the man rose up and got him to his place. And when he was come into his house, he took a knife, and laid hold on his concubine, and divided her, together with her bones, into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the coasts of Israel. And it was so that all that saw it said, There was no such deed done nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt to this day. Consider of it, take advice, and speak your minds. Judges, chapter 20. Then all the children of Israel went out, and the congregation was gathered together as one man, from Dan even to Beersheba, with the land of Gilead to the Lord in Mizpah. And the chief of all the people, even all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 footmen that drew the sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel were gone up to Mizpah. Then said the children of Israel, Tell us, how was this wickedness? And the Levite, the husband of the woman that was slain, answered and said, I came into Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to lodge. And the men of Gibeah rose up against me, and beset the house round about on me by night, and thought to have slain me, and my concubine have they forced, that she is dead. And I took my concubine, and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed lewdness and folly in Israel. Behold, you are all children of Israel. Give here your advice and counsel. And all the people arose as one man, saying, We will not any of us go to his tent, neither will we any of us turn into his house. But now this shall be the thing which we shall do to Gibeah. We will go up by lot against it. And we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000, to fetch victual for the people, that they may do, when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, according to all the folly that they have worked in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, knit together as one man. And the tribes of Israel set men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What wickedness is this that is done among you? Now therefore deliver us the men, the children of Belial, which are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death, and put away evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the children of Israel. But the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities of Gibeah, to go out to battle against the children of Israel. And the children of Benjamin were numbered at that time out of the cities 26,000 men that drew the sword, beside the inhabitants of Gibeah, which were numbered 700 chosen men. Among all this people there were 700 chosen men left-handed. Everyone could sling stones at an hairbreadth and not miss. And the men of Israel beside Benjamin were numbered 400,000 men that drew the sword. All these were men of war. And the children of Israel arose and went up to the house of God, and asked counsel of God, and said, Which of us shall go up first to the battle against the children of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. And the children of Israel rose up in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel put themselves in array to fight against him at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Gibeah, and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites that day 22,000 men. And the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves, and set their battle again in array in the place where they put themselves in array the first day. And the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until even, and asked the counsel of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? And the Lord said, Go up against him. And the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went forth against them out of Gibeah the second day, and destroyed down to the ground of the children of Israel again 18,000 men. All these drew the sword. Then all the children of Israel and all the people went up and came to the house of God, and wept, and sat there before the Lord, and fasted that day until even, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the children of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet go again out to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. And Israel set liers in wait round about Gibeah. And the children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day, and put themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. And the children of Benjamin went out against the people, and were drawn away from the city, and they began to smite of the people and kill, as at other times, in the highways, of which one goes up to the house of God, and the other to Gibeah in the field, about 30 men of Israel. And the children of Benjamin said, They are smitten down before us as at the first. But the children of Israel said, Let us flee, and draw them from the city to the highways. And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place, and put themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the liers in wait of Israel came forth out of their places, even out of the meadows of Gibeah. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was sore. But they knew not that evil was near them. And the Lord smote Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed of the Benjamites that day 25,100 men. All these drew the sword. So the children of Benjamin saw that they were smitten, for the men of Israel gave place to the Benjamites, because they trusted to the liers in wait, which they had set beside Gibeah. And the liers in wait hurried and rushed on Gibeah, and the liers in wait drew themselves along, and smote all the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Israel and the liers in wait, that they should make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. And when the men of Israel retired in the battle, Benjamin began to smite, and kill of the men of Israel about 30 persons, for they said, Surely they are smitten down before us as in the first battle. But when the flame began to arise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the flame of the city ascended up to heaven. And when the men of Israel turned again, and the men of Benjamin were amazed, for they saw that evil was come on them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel to the way of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, and them which came out of the cities they destroyed in the middle of them. Thus they enclosed the Benjamites round about, and chased them, and stepped them down with ease over against Gibeah toward the sunrise. And there fell of Benjamin 18,000 men. All these were men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. And they gleaned of them in the highway 5,000 men, and pursued hard after them to get them, and slew 2,000 men of them. So that all that which fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men that drew the sword. All these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness to the rock Rimmon, and stayed in the rock Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned again on the children of Benjamin, and smote them with the edge of the sword, as well the men of every city as the beast, and all that came to hand. Also they set on fire all the cities that they came to. Judges, chapter 21. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, There shall not any of us give his daughter to Benjamin to wife. And the people came to the house of God, and stayed there till even before God, and lifted up their voices, and wept sore, and said, O Lord God of Israel, why is this come to pass in Israel, that there should be today one tribe lacking in Israel? And it came to pass on the morrow that the people rose early, and built there an altar, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the children of Israel said, Who is there among all the tribes of Israel that came not up with the congregation to the Lord? For they had made a great oath concerning him that came not up to the Lord to Mizpah, saying, He shall surely be put to death. And the children of Israel repented them for Benjamin their brother, and said, There is one tribe cut off from Israel this day. How shall we do for wives for them that remain, seeing we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them of our daughters to wives? And they said, What one is there of the tribes of Israel that came not up to Mizpah to the Lord? And behold, there came none to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For the people were numbered, and behold, there were none of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead there. And the congregation sent thither 12,000 men of the most valiant, and commanded them, saying, Go and smite the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and the children. And this is the thing that you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male, and every woman that has lain by man. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins that had known no man by lying with any male, and they brought them to the camp to Shiloh, which is the land of Canaan. And the whole congregation sent some to speak to the children of Benjamin that were in the rock Rimmon, and to call peaceably to them. And Benjamin came again at that time, and they gave them wives which they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead, and yet so they sufficed them not. And the people repented them for Benjamin, because that the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, How shall we do for wives for them that remain, seeing the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, There must be an inheritance for them that be escaped of Benjamin, that a tribe be not destroyed out of Israel. However, we may not give them wives of our daughters, for the children of Israel have sworn, saying, Cursed be he that gives a wife to Benjamin. Then they said, Behold, there is a feast to the Lord in Shiloh, yearly in a place which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south of Lebonah. Therefore they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards. And see, and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in dances, then come you out of the vineyards, and catch you every man his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall be, when their fathers or their brothers come to us to complain, that we will say to them, Be favorable to them for our sakes, because we reserve not to each man his wife in the war. For you did not give to them at this time, that you should be guilty. And the children of Benjamin did so, and took them wives, according to their number of them that danced, whom they caught. And they went in, returned to their inheritance, and repaired the cities, and dwelled in them. And the children of Israel departed there at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from there, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.